So, ego. Anyone here got an ego? Anyone here got two egos? Frankie, of course, has no ego, so she doesn't have to worry about that. But yes, the ego. I'm going to talk to you about something that comes from Voice Dialogue, the Psychology of Selves, introduced by Hal and Sidra Stone. If you want to follow up on that, I've got some flyers you can look at and read all about it. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about this because it's a wonderful way to start to identify where we get stuck in conflict. And it's the stuckness that often has us going on for years and years and years with the same feelings and the same attitudes and so on. So, here we go. Okay, so this particular view, whoops, it's warped like Frankie. Can you see okay? Okay, yes. It's got a curve in it. All right, so primary selves. This is a way of looking at our egos as a mixture of ways that we have developed to survive that are the way that we tend to present ourselves in life, and often this is who we think we are. So, for example, if you're a very young child and everyone is, you're 6 months old and you're smiling and everyone is looking at you and when you giggle, you make them laugh and all these good feelings come to you, then you start to develop straight away a whole good idea in your mind, in your little mind, that, oh, this works, this is good. The more I do this, the better it feels. They give me all this nice stuff. So it's a very initial positive survival kind of mechanism that comes in. So that's the pleaser, okay? So the pleaser is one of the first primary selves, and a primary self is essentially a way of being in a given situation. It's a way of being that we just automatically go into. So with some people, the pleaser might not be strong. With somebody else in your life, as soon as they walk in the door, bloody hell, before you know it, you're kind of giving way, you're wanting to please them and losing touch with your own power. Is that familiar to anybody? So it's the pleaser that does that. Okay, so one of the first things that comes in along with this is like the rule maker and the protector. So that's the part of us that susses out what's safe in our environment. So if you grew up, for example, with, say, a volatile parent who tended to go into moods and maybe get mad every now and then in unexpected ways. So this little part of you is watching like crazy and trying to figure out a way to be around that very scary, I say it slightly, but for a little baby, it's very scary. It's scary energy to make things feel safe and okay. Okay, so what might develop then, for example, is more and more of the pleaser. For some people, so the rule maker and the protector come up with all these rules about what works and what doesn't, okay? So just even sitting here now, if I ask a question and some of you put up your hands and some of you don't, the rule maker in you will have decided in that split second whether it's an okay thing to do in this sort of situation to put up your hand. If I asked you all to leap up on your chairs and dance right now, which I won't, then there's a very good chance that some of you would, and a lot of you wouldn't. Why not? Huh? That's right, that's right. So the rule maker is wanting to make sure we don't embarrass ourselves, we get it right. So whatever environment we go into a party, we go to the family lunch, we go to whatever it is, the rule maker is busy there kind of sussing it out, saying this is okay, but that's not okay. And along with that develops this well-known fellow or woman, the inner critic. So that's the part of us that gives us a hard time when we don't get all those rules right and we do make a fool of ourselves. So that can come in very early in our life when maybe there's a stuff up and everybody laughs, we make a fool of ourselves, maybe we get rejected or abandoned in some way. So very quickly, these things are sort of in place saying, well, that didn't work, you better stop doing that. Okay. So that's when those cells start to come in, and they become very strong because they're very successful for us. They help keep us safe. They help help our world function the way it does. Okay. So some people might develop a responsible self. So if there was a lot of chaos, if perhaps you had a mother who wasn't very together or very organized or something was going on with her, maybe she was depressed or something, so you might start to develop a responsible self. So the responsible self is the one that looks around and thinks, well, she's not going to get it together, I'm going to have to do it. So off you go, and you start to become responsible self. And what happens is we can start to identify. In fact, we do identify, and we think that's who we are. But really, they're just all different parts of us. That's the bottom line about this. So another part that's very strong to develop is the pusher. Anyone recognize the pusher? So the pusher is the part of us. Anyone got a pile of books by their bed waiting to be read? Yep. Who's going to try and see every single thing at Woodford that you want to see, regardless of how tired you are and how late at night? The pusher wants us to do everything. The pusher's very busy. It sees absolutely no reason to stop. So what happens if the pusher is running your life? If you're completely identified and the pusher is running your life, what might your life be like? You have to yell because I can't hear you here. Yeah, nervous breakdown, yes. Messy, stressy, yes. Yes, you often get sick. So if you've got a pusher running your life, there's a good chance you'll get very sick and run down. Okay. So it's rare, and the point of voice dialogue is to be aware of these parts and then be able to let the other part of yourself in. So the opposite to pusher for somebody might be their being energy, whether you can just not answer the phone, or you can turn it off, or you can just read a book, when you declare a few hours just for yourself. That can be described. The pleaser might think that's selfish, because the pleaser might be wanting to rush up the door and answer the nearest phone and all of that kind of stuff. Okay? So see how these cells can hook us in to behaving in ways automatically that don't necessarily work for us overall. So it's really nice to know the balance. So in voice dialogue, you actually talk to both sides of these parts of yourself from a place of awareness. So the neutral place is a place of awareness where you're just watching and you're not judging. Because all of these parts of ourselves has very strong rules about how you should be. And if you're not like that, then your inner critic will be beating you up for being like that. The one that beats up other people is the judge. So the judge gets in there and has its own me about how other people should behave. So most of us have probably got a bit of a judge. Yes, it's there. Again, it came in for a good reason. It's all about sussing out the world, making it safe, making it okay, helping us feel like we belong, getting us approval. There's a bit of a down these days on seeking approval, but we all need to belong. We all need love. We all need to know that people like and respect us. So it's a fantastic thing to have a part of you that's really tuned in to how to work with whoever you're with at that time. That's a wonderful thing. But what happens if the pleaser's running your life? What might happen? You forget yourself. You do. You forget yourself. Doesn't matter how tired you are. You just keep on and on. It's kind of a little bit like a pusher. Okay. All right. Now, some of us have got, I'm just talk about one more of these because there's so many of them. But one more is the psychological knower. So if you've gone, who's gone to sort of a few workshops in the kind of self-development area and learning about yourself and stuff like that? And a few of those, yes. So what happens when we do this, Hal, who invented this work, Hal Stone, said that when people started to do self-development work, they thought that the old inner critic, that critical inner voice, would disappear because everyone was looking at the whole thing of self-esteem. So they wouldn't have to worry about that inner critic, it would just go. But what happened? The inner critic got bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Because for every talk you went to, every book you read, every documentary you watch, more and more rules as to how to try and get it right. So the inner critic got bigger and bigger and bigger. So inner critics often hook in with psychological knowers, how to live, how to be happy, how to do it all right, how to be more spiritual and all this kind of stuff. So this whole approach is actually about learning to embrace all of yourself. And that's actually the title of Hal Stone Sidra's book. It's called Embracing Yourselves. It's about having all of it and acknowledging all of it. Because if we identify with just a few of these and we don't acknowledge all this other energy, it'll come up from behind and get us. Now, why are these energies all in place? Why are these primary cells in place? To protect the anxiety of the inner child underneath. The inner child is very open and vulnerable. We're incredibly sensitive to what's going on around it. So very quickly we find ways to protect this. And these different ways of being all have their way of doing that. But pushed down underneath, what is running these primary cells is the anxiety underneath it. So the anxiety, for example, underneath the pusher, or underneath the pusher, the anxiety under that might be a feeling like you've just got to get it together. If you don't get it together, if you don't get all these things done, then you're not going to be good enough, or people will call you incompetent, people might criticize you. So there's an anxiety underneath it. You might criticize you. So if you take a day off and don't go into work and don't listen to that pusher, then all those critical voices might start to happen, or people might give you a hard time and so on. So there's a lot of critical rules that we've got going on inside and outside, and together they help to keep all that vulnerability at bay. Okay, now is that making sense for people? The vulnerability that's underneath it. So it's around feeling lost, feeling rejected, feeling incompetent. If you go right down into your deeper vulnerable selves, you might find feeling a fear of being alone, feelings of being abandoned and lost. So a lot of quite sad and deep pain is in there. So if you've been left in your life as a child, if you dealt with difficult things like separations and loss, then you'll know that the terrible feelings come with that. And we try to get over them as fast as we can, which makes sense. But often we just end up pushing them down and put on one of our protector selves over the top of it.